யாதம் உரே யாவரும் கேடீர்.
செம்மொழி வலையொலி யூடியூப் சேனல். இந்த சேனலின் மூலமாக, அந்த வலையொலியின் மூலமாக பல்வேறு தகவல்களை தினந்தோறும் நாங்கள் வழங்கி கொண்டிருக்கக்கூடிய அந்த நிலையில் முழுமையாக கண்டு பார்க்கலாம்.
The title of this paper is Select Puram Poems, a Deconstructive Study. Deconstruction is a philosophically skeptical approach to the possibility of coherent meaning, initiated by the French philosopher Derrida in a series of works including Speech and Phenomena of Grammatology and Writing and Difference. It has been adopted by numerous literary critics from the early 1970s onwards. The term difference, coined by him, combining difference with deferral, suggests that differential nature of meanings in language ceaselessly defers or postpones any determinate meaning. Language, according to him, is an endless chain or play of difference. Derrida contends that deconstruction is neither destruction nor reconstruction. It means that a poem is shown to dismantle itself. The author might not have intended his poem to convey what a deconstructive critic reveals in it by reading it against the grain. The aim of deconstructive criticism is to show the poem in a perspective unknown to itself. It brings to light what is not explicit by examining the relationship between the linguistic elements which the author can and cannot have under his control. Deconstructive readings identify within a text what is called the aporia, or internal contradiction that undermines its claims to coherent meaning. Apart from showing how Puram poems deconstruct themselves, we are surprised to note that how, in the case of certain poems, our learned commentators were not only aware of multiple contradicting interpretations, but ready to accept all of them. Pakkudukkai Nanganiyar speaks of the tragic human condition in a short poem of 7 lines. ஓரில் நெய்தல் கரங்க, ஓரில் இருந்தன் முழவின் பாணி ததும்ப, புணர்ந்தோர் பூவணி அணிய, பிரிந்தோர் பைதல் உண்கண் பணிவார்பு உரைப்ப, படைத்தோன் மன்ற அப்பண்பிலாளன் இன்னாதம்ம இவ்வுலகம் இனிய காண்க இதன் இயல்புணர்ந்தோரே. The old commentator of Purananuru takes the Tinai and Thurai of this poem to be Podu Iyal and Perunganji. Poduviyal Tinai is defined as the one that describes what is common to all Tinais. Perunganji Thurai deals with the transitoriness of life. His interpretation of the poem is as follows. ஒரு மனையின் கண்ணே சாக்காட்டு பறை ஒலிப்ப, ஒரு மனையின் கண்ணே மனத்திற்கு கொட்டும் மிக குளிர்ந்த முழவினது ஓசை மிக ஒலிப்ப, காதலரோடு கூடின மகளிர் பூவணியை அணிய, பிரிந்த மகளிரது வருத்தத்தையுடைய உன் கண்கள் நீர்வார்ந்து துளிப்ப, இப்பரிசு ஒத்து ஒத்து ஒவ்வாமை படைத்தோன் நிச்சிதமாக அன்பில்லாதோனாகிய நான்முகன். கொடிது இவ்வுலகினது இயற்கை ஆதலான் இவ்வுலகினது தன்மை அறிந்தோர் வீட்டின்பத்தை தரும் நல்ல செய்கைகளை அறிந்து செய்து கொள்க. இதன் இயல்பு உணர்ந்தோர் இன்னாமையை இனியவாக காண்க என்று உரைப்பினும் அமையும். This is the interpretation given by the old commentator. In one house the death drum sounds, whereas in another house the pleasing wedding music of a concert drum makes a loud deep sound. Women who are with their lovers wear ornaments of flowers, whereas the eyes of women who are separated from their men are full of tears. Surely the four-faced God who has created the world in this discriminating manner is not a virtuous one. This is a cruel world. Let those who know its nature therefore do the good deeds that will fetch them heavenly bliss. The last line of the poem, according to the commentator, may also be taken to mean, let those who know its nature treat this misery as pleasure. Even the first casual reading of the poem will draw our attention to the following binary oppositions. Naidal, Muravu, death drum, wedding drum, death, wedding, women separated from their lovers, women united with their lovers, shedding tears, wearing flowers, miseries, delights. What is painful in this world? What is pleasing in this world? This world, the other world, which may be heaven. Man, God, the one who created the miserable world, the one who created the joyful world. Having observed human life closely and meditated upon all aspects of it, this poet ventures to express his view of the world. He condemns the creator of this world as one who lacks virtue, because death ceremonies and wedding celebrations, women shedding tears and women sporting jewels are common sights to be found together almost every day in this world. But then we are not sure if the poet says that since the world is miserable, man has to do good to go to the other world, as the commentator suggests. There is no direct reference in the poem to the other world. Again, we are not sure if the poet says that since our life here is a mixed bag, we have to take into consideration only the pleasant side and ignore the painful one. We are intrigued when the poet calls the creator of the world one without virtue. It is a harsh term, but not as abusive as the terms like villain or mischief monger, which he could have used if he had so desired. There is a distinct possibility that he may not mean it, since it may merely be a case of sacred profanity, very common in later bhakti poetry. One of the four Saivite Acharyas, Sundarar, known to be a laureate of sacred profanity, often reprimands Lord Shiva for not having come to his rescue on many occasions. Even Thiruvalluvar, though having a separate chapter at the beginning of his work devoted to the praise of God, says in a section called Iravacham, dread of begging, இறந்தும் உயிர் வாழ்தல் வேண்டின் பரந்து கெடுக உலகியற்றியான். If he that created the world desires that men should go begging in order to survive, let him wander the world over and perish. The great commentator Parimelazhagar uses equally severe words in his interpretation of the poem. இவ்வுலகத்தை படைத்தவன் இதன்கண் வாழ்வார்க்கு முயன்று உயிர் வாழ்தலை அன்றி இறந்தும் உயிர் வாழ்தலை வேண்டி விதித்தானாயின் அக்கொடியோன் தானும் அவரை போன்று எங்கும் அலமந்து கெடுவானாக. This is the interpretation given by Parimelazhagar. If the one that created this world has decreed that those who live here should live by begging and not try other means to survive, let that wicked being wander all over the place like them and be ruined. Pakudukkai Nanganiyar might not have meant that the Creator is a vicious being, but could have used Panbilalan as a term of endearment. The poet accepts that even if the world is miserable, it is possible to look at it as a pleasant one. It would mean that the Creator of the world, who has made life painful, has endowed us with the capacity to live happily despite the difficulties on the way. The Creator then cannot be held completely responsible for what prevails here. If there is a hidden reference to the other world, then it is he who must have created that too. It is possible to approach the poem from a completely different angle. We may take it to mean that everything depends upon our attitude to life, and that there is nothing pleasing or dreadful about any happening like wedding or death. God might have created the world out of good intentions, and what we consider evil may be good and vice versa. Are there two different categories like miseries and delights? Or are we expected to consider miseries themselves delights? The poet is reported to be an Ajivaka, giving expression to that sect's philosophy of life, but the poem may be found to say just the opposite of what he wants to convey. In a well-known poem, Kabilar pays a glowing tribute to the chieftain Pari, who might have been a living legend of his time. பாரி பாரி என்று பல ஏத்தி ஒருவர் புகழ்வர் சென்னா புலவர், பாரி ஒருவனும் அல்லன் மாரியும் உண்டு ஈண்டு உலகு புறப்பதுவே. The bards of truthful tongues say Pari Pari, praising his many merits. Pari is not the only one who looks after the world, the rain also does it. The Tinai and Thurai of this poem are taken to be Padan and Iyanmozhi. The commentators Ilamburanar and Nachinarkiniyar cite this poem as an example of Padan Tinai, which is used to eulogize those who give. In Ilamburanar's view, since this says that Pari and the rain do not suffer from anything degrading, the simile employed belongs to the category called the simile of usefulness, payan uamai. The figure of speech by which this meaning is conveyed is known as praising in the guise of blaming. If the figure of speech present in the poem as intended by the poet is ignored, it would literally mean when the birds praising Pari to the skies claims that he is the one who saves the world, they seem to ignore the fact that it is the rain too that protects the world. Translating the poem in the following manner, A.K. Ramanujan contends that the poet cocks a snook at other poets' sycophantic ravings and laughs gently at the importance of chieftains. This is how he translates the poem. Pari pari they cry. These poets with their good red tongues praising one man in many ways. Yet it is not only Pari, the rains also keep the world going in these parts. The poets are called Sanna Pulavar in the original, which figuratively means poets with eloquent or truthful tongues. But A.K. Ramanujan takes the literal meaning of the phrase and renders it poets with their good red tongues. The word Puhalvar in the original means only say, but Ramanujan renders it cry, a pejorative word. In his view, the bards are ridiculed for flattering Pari by exaggerating his importance, and Pari himself is ridiculed for having an exaggerated notion of his own greatness when he himself happens to be a small chieftain and not one of the three big kings of Tamil Nadu. This is far from what Kabilar would have meant, because he has paid glowing tributes to Pari in other poems. But then when the figure of speech is not taken into account, the poem may mean what Ramanujan says. Paul the Man, one of the leading deconstructionists, argues that the literal meaning of a poem may at times be preferable to its figurative meaning when both the possibilities are there. But in Kabilar's poem, the literal meaning happens to be the opposite of what the poet wants to say. Okkur Masatyar has a poem praising the woman of a warrior clan for her grit and determination. This is the poem. Keduga Sindai Kadidu Ival Tunive Moodil Magaliradal Tahume Melnal Utra Servirku Ival Tan Ai Yanai Yerindu Kalathu Vizhindanane Nerinal Utra Serivirku Ival Kolunan Perunirai Vilangi Aandu Pattanane Indrum செருப்பறை கேட்டு விருப்புற்று மயங்கி வேல் கை கொடுத்து வெளிது விரித்து உடி பாரு மயிர்க்குடிமி எண்ணெய் நீவி ஒரு மகன் அல்லது இல்லோள் செருமுகம் நோக்கி செல்க என விடுமே. The poet says, let her will be damned. கெடுக இவள் சிந்தை. Her decision is cruel. It is true that she is a woman descended from an ancient clan. The battle that took place the day before yesterday, her father killed an elephant and fell dead on the field. In the battle that took place yesterday, her husband stopped a group of warriors from stealing away a large group of cows and then was cut down. Today, hearing the sound of the war drum, being overwhelmed with desire and forgetting herself, she handed over a spear to her only son, put a white garment around his body, smeared oil upon the top knot of his hair, and told him, "Go now to the battlefield." The author of the poem clearly intends it to be a tribute to the heroic woman. But the words "Kedugasindai, Kadidu ivar Tunive" in the first line and the word "Mayangi" in the seventh line, if taken literally, would mean that the protagonist does the whole thing in a confused state of mind, and that what she is doing is not a praiseworthy deed, but an extremely cruel one, which has to be condemned. The old commentator interprets the word Mayangi as being unaware of what she is doing.